Welcome to Module 16, where we will dive into the crucial topic of structuring real estate development finance. This module will guide you through the essential aspects of financing project development, helping you understand how to effectively organize and manage the financial side of real estate projects. We'll cover important concepts and strategies that are key to securing funding and ensuring the viability of your development. Let's explore how to structure these finances to maximize success and minimize risk. Project development financing is all about securing the right mix of capital to bring a real estate project from start to finish. It involves structuring both short-term and long-term funding to cover everything from acquiring the land and designing the project to constructing and ultimately delivering the finished asset. The key here is to combine debt and equity strategically, making sure there's enough construction capital initially, followed by permanent financing once the project is complete. This approach not only aligns the funding with the specific needs of each stage, but also carefully balances the risks, returns, and repayment responsibilities between lenders, investors, and the developer. It's a crucial process that ensures a project stays financially viable throughout its life cycle. Here, we're looking at the project financing timeline broken down into four key phases. First, in the pre-development stage, the focus is on securing site control, completing design and approvals, and obtaining early equity commitments. This is when the groundwork is laid to move forward confidently. Next is a construction phase, where loan draws are used to fund vertical construction as certain milestones are reached. This allows for steady progress while managing cash flow effectively. Then, during the lease-up phase, leasing activity begins to pick up significantly, helping the cash flow stabilize as units are occupied. Finally, in the permanent phase, long-term financing replaces a construction debt, securing the project's financial foundation for the years ahead. Understanding this timeline is crucial for managing and financing a successful development project. Here, we're looking at the four main pillars of project financing, each playing a crucial role in funding development projects. First, construction loans provide the short-term debt needed to cover land improvements and building as the project progresses. Once construction is completed, takeout loans step in as permanent financing to repay those initial construction loans. Next is equity financing, which represents the cash capital invested by developers and investors. This equity is vital because it absorbs the first layer of risk, protecting lenders and other financiers. Finally, mezzanine financing is a form of higher cost, subordinate debt that bridges a gap between senior debt and equity, helping to complete the funding package. Together, these four types of financing work in tandem to support the successful development and completion of a project. Understanding how each fits into the financial structure is key to managing risks and ensuring smooth progress from start to finish. Construction loans are a type of short-term debt financing used specifically to cover the costs of land acquisition, design, and construction. Essentially, they fund the development phase of a project before it can qualify for long-term, permanent financing. One key characteristic of construction loans is their temporary nature. They're intended to bridge the gap during the planning, building, and lease-up stages. Typically, borrowers are required to make interest-only payments during construction. This means they're not paying down the principal until the project reaches a stage where it can be refinanced with permanent debt. Lenders secure these loans using collateral, which is usually the land itself, any improvements made, and the overall project value. This structure helps ensure the lender's risk is managed while providing the developer with the necessary capital to move forward. Here, we're looking at how construction loans are typically funded throughout the life of a project. First, the lender commits the capital up front, but instead of giving all the money at once, the funds are released in stages. This stage funding helps ensure the money is used appropriately as the project advances. Next, the funds go into a disbursement account. This account is carefully controlled, and the lender releases money based on verified draws. That means each draw must be approved before the funds are disbursed, adding a layer of oversight. Finally, the money moves from that account to cover actual project expenses, things like labor, materials, and subcontractor costs. Importantly, disbursements align with the project's progress, so payment are made only as work is verified to be completed. This process helps protect both the lender and the borrower by ensuring the funds are used as intended. In financing project development, The process of loan draws and disbursement is carefully structured to ensure proper use of funds. Step 1 begins with the developer submitting a draw request, which includes invoices, lien waivers, and progress documentation to support the funding request. Next, in Step 2, the lender inspects the progress made on the project. They verify that the completed work aligns with the budget, schedule, and milestone targets. Once the lender is satisfied, Step 3 involves disbursing the approved funds from the construction loan facility. Finally, in Step 4, the contractor receives payment, allowing cash flow to builders, subcontractors, and suppliers for the work already completed. This staged approach ensures that capital is released only after documented progress is reviewed and approved. Here we see the typical construction milestones alongside the corresponding cumulative loan advances during a project. The process begins with the foundation completion, at which point about 15% of the loan funds are released after inspection. Next is the framing stage, sometimes called a structure in place, triggering a 35% loan advance. Once the building is dried in with the roof completed, the loan release increases to 50%. As core systems like mechanical, electrical, and plumbing are installed, funding reaches 70%. When the interior finishes near completion, lenders release 90% of the loan. Finally, at occupancy and project closeout, the full 100% of the loan is disbursed. The key concept here is that loan funds are released incrementally in stages, only after each verified milestone is successfully completed. This approach helps manage risk and ensures steady progress throughout the financing of the project. Here, we're looking at the transition from short-term to long-term debt in project financing. During the construction phase, short-term debt is used to fund the building activity. This type of financing is closely monitored because the funds are drawn as needed and then repaid once the project reaches stabilization or completion. It's a higher risk period since the asset isn't generating income yet. Once construction is complete, the project switches to long-term debt or permanent financing. This is often called takeout financing. At this stage, the asset is ready for occupancy and starts generating income, so the repayment is backed by that cash flow. The risk is lower, and the financing is structured accordingly. Essentially, this shift happens when the project moves from being a construction site to a fully operational property. On this slide, we're focusing on takeout loans, which are a key part of financing project development. Essentially, a takeout loan is a permanent loan that replaces the initial construction loan once the building is completed. These loans typically have a long duration, usually between 15 to 30 years, providing stability over the life of the project. The rate structure for takeout loans can vary. They might be fixed, meaning the interest rate stays the same throughout the loan term, or floating, which means the rate can change based on market conditions or lender terms. Another important aspect is the trigger for these loans, which usually happens after certain milestones are met, like lease-up or achieving a specific occupancy level. This ensures the project is performing as expected before the permanent financing kicks in. Overall, takeout loans play a crucial role in moving a project from construction into a stable, long-term financial phase. When we talk about equity financing in project development, we're referring to the ownership capital contributed by both the developer and passive investors. This capital forms the foundation of the project's financial structure and is critical for moving forward. The sources of common equity include several key components. First, there's a developer's own cash, which represents their direct financial commitment to the project. Then, we have investor commitments, which come from those who provide capital but don't actively manage the project. Partnership equity is another important source, reflecting collective investments made through the partnership structure. Lastly, retained earnings contribute to equity, representing profits that have been reinvested back into the project rather than distributed. Together, these sources create a pool of funds that finance the development, ensuring both the developer and investors have a stake in the project's success. Here, we're looking at different levels of leverage used to finance project development, expressed through debt-to-equity ratios. Starting with low leverage, this involves about 60% debt and 40% equity. This approach tends to carry lower risk and offers steadier, more predictable returns. Next is moderate leverage, where 70% of the financing comes from debt and 30% from equity. This balance suits many projects well by managing both risk and return effectively. Finally, high leverage uses 80% debt and only 20% equity. While this can lead to higher potential returns, it also comes with greater financing risk. Understanding these ratios helps us make informed decisions about how much debt and equity to use based on the project's risk tolerance and return goals. Let's talk about mezzanine financing and its position within the capital stack. The capital stack is essentially the hierarchy of funding sources used to finance a project, with senior debt at the top, followed by mezzanine debt, and then equity at the bottom. Mezzanine debt is a form of subordinated debt, meaning it sits below senior loans, but above pure equity in priority. This positioning means mezzanine financing carries more risk than senior debt, because it gets repaid after senior lenders if things don't go as planned. However, this higher risk comes with the potential for higher returns compared to senior debt, which makes it attractive to some investors. Although mezzanine financing is debt, it tends to have some equity-like characteristics, hence it being called the bridge layer. It bridges the gap between the safer, lower-yield senior loans and the riskier, potentially high-return equity. This type of financing is commonly used to fund project development, particularly in construction and permanent loan scenarios where additional capital is needed beyond what senior debt can provide. In summary, mezzanine financing fills an important niche in project funding by blending risk and return characteristics between senior debt and equity, enabling developers to access the necessary capital to move projects forward. When financing project development, it's crucial to be aware of several key risks that can impact the success of the investment. First, construction delays can push back project timelines, increasing costs and delaying revenue generation. Next, market absorption risk refers to the possibility that the market may not be able to absorb the project's output as quickly or as fully as anticipated, which can affect profitability. Then, interest rate volatility can alter financing costs, making debt more expensive if rates rise unexpectedly. Another risk is lender default, where a lender might fail to provide the promised funds, disrupting the project's cash flow. Lastly, an equity shortfall occurs when there isn't enough equity capital invested to cover project needs, which can jeopardize project completion. Recognizing these risks early helps in planning more resilient financing strategies. Let's talk about mitigating development risks, focusing on both structural and operational strategies. Starting with structural mitigants, these are mechanisms designed to reduce financial uncertainty. Fixed rate locks are one such tool. They help stabilize borrowing costs by locking in interest rates, protecting the project from market fluctuations. Then we have completion guarantees, which ensure that the project will be finished as promised, providing a safety net in case of delays or unexpected issues. Loan recourse is another important aspect, as it defines a lender's ability to recover funds, offering another layer of financial security. On the operational side, pre-leasing and pre-sales are key tactics. Pre-leasing helps secure tenants before the project is completed, which can reduce income risk and improve cash flow predictability. Similarly, pre-sales involve selling units ahead of completion, which provides upfront capital and reduces market risk. Contingency reserves act as a financial buffer, setting aside funds to cover unforeseen expenses during development. And finally, having experienced operators involved ensures the project is managed effectively, leveraging their knowledge to avoid common pitfalls. Together, these strategies create a comprehensive approach to financing project development by addressing both financial and operational risks. Here we have a case study illustrating how blending debt and equity can effectively finance a $50 million development project. The capital stack is simplified into three main layers. At the base, we have senior debt of $30 million, which is typically the most secure and lowest cost financing. Next is mezzanine financing, contributing $10 million, which fills the gap between senior debt and equity by offering a higher return but with increased risk. Finally, the equity portion is also $10 million, representing the developer's own investment or that of equity partners. This layered approach allows developers to close the funding gap efficiently, balancing risk and costs while securing the total project financing. It's a practical example of how combining different capital sources can make large-scale developments achievable. Now, let's talk about the key sources of equity capital used in financing project development. Institutional investors, such as REITs and pension funds, play a significant role by providing large pools of capital. Private equity firms are also major players, often seeking high return development deals that offer greater potential profits. High net worth individuals contribute flexible private capital, which can be particularly valuable due to its adaptability and speed. Lastly, the developer's own balance sheet is crucial as it demonstrates the sponsor's commitment to the project, helping to build confidence among other investors. Understanding these sources is essential for grasping how development projects secure the necessary equity to move forward. When financing project development, it's important to understand the different types of loans and how they work together. First, construction loans are short-term financing designed specifically for the build phase of a project. They provide the capital needed to get the construction underway and keep it moving until completion. Once the project is finished, takeout loans come into play. These loans convert the temporary construction financing into permanent funding, making the financial structure more stable over the long term. Balancing debt and equity is crucial throughout this process. You have to carefully manage these two sources of capital to ensure the project is funded responsibly without taking on too much risk. Lastly, mezzanine financing acts as a bridge between senior debt and equity. It can fill critical gaps in funding, offering additional flexibility and support to keep development on track. Together, these components form the backbone of financing for successful project development. Successful developers recognize the importance of timing, structure, and risk allocation when managing construction, mezzanine, and permanent financing. To summarize key financing strategies for success, first, pre-leasing is crucial because it demonstrates demand early on. This not only builds lender confidence, but also improves the viability of the project's eventual takeout. Second, working with experienced lenders is essential. They provide disciplined oversight of drawer requests, offer realistic terms, and ensure dependable execution throughout the capital stack. Lastly, maintaining realistic underwriting keeps costs, timing, and exit assumptions grounded. This alignment between debt and equity safeguards a project's financial health and enhances the likelihood of success. Together, these strategies form a solid foundation for effective financing in project development.